Have you ever felt personally victimized by receiving constructive feedback? Have you ever felt like you've been put into an uncomfortable position when you had to give feedback? Well, you're not the only one. Studies have shown that approximately 60% of employees have experienced damage to their self-esteem upon receiving feedback from their bosses. Feedback, although essential for personal growth, often feels like a chore to give and quite dreadful to receive. Now, let's take a look at a few scenarios. Here, we can see Sue welcoming Chris to practice. However, Chris is not demonstrating the correct techniques, and Sue is unhappy. She decides that she is going to cross her arms, raise her voice, and get in Chris's face to express how she feels about his lack of performance. Her tone of voice is making Chris uncomfortable as he backs away and avoids eye contact. Now, let's take a look at the same scenario done differently. In this scenario, Chris is still not demonstrating the correct techniques that Sue expects. Although Sue is unhappy with the performance, she continues to observe Chris and takes notes on what she can help him with. She also pulls him aside to demonstrate the correct techniques in a calm and collected voice, with palms open and eye contact. It is important to note that feedback should be given in a more private setting, allowing the individual to avoid embarrassment. Overall, Sue is ensuring that she is making Chris feel comfortable and he appears willing to learn from his mistakes. Sue continues to give Chris positive feedback as his technique improves and the two have clearly succeeded. Let's take a look at an entirely different scenario. In this situation, Manager Sue is about to have a talk with employee Chris about his lack of paper sales. The progress report just doesn't look good, and Sue is ready to delicately handle this matter. Chris, on the other hand, he's taking it too personally. His body language is poor. He's hearing Sue, but clearly is not listening. He's lucky he doesn't get fired after this meeting. In a much better scenario, Chris is more attentive. His eye contact is present with frequent nods indicating that he understands Sue's perspective. Sue has also given him more recommendations to ensure more paper sales and has also allowed for his input. Sometimes we forget that the whole point of feedback is to be on the same page and not to necessarily attack one person's ideas. The handshake at the end indicates common ground found by both Sue and Chris. In a completely different scenario, Chris is seen here giving a presentation in class. Sue, a classmate, is meant to provide Chris with constructive feedback. She is also waving her hands at him, and her utterances about Chris's presentation are not necessarily pleasant. Her actions and utterances make Chris feel uncomfortable and disappointed about his efforts towards his presentation. This is certainly not a great way to provide a fellow peer with feedback, as it negatively impacts the feelings and emotions of the receiver, in this case, Chris. Throughout the video, we have learned useful tips about how to give and receive feedback. In the remake of this scene, we're going to apply these tips alongside the Pendleton model. There are many models of giving feedback. However, the Pendleton model adopts a more learner-centered, conversation-based approach. It allows for actionable plans and goals to be made. In this scene, Sue adopts the Pendleton model as a way to provide Chris with constructive feedback. Sue first begins by highlighting all the positive aspects of Chris's presentation. Next, she allows Chris to talk about what he thinks he did well during the presentation. Sue then reinforces these positives and allows Chris to suggest what could have been improved upon throughout the presentation. Sue then provides recommendations for change, and a mutually agreed action plan is formulated. As you can see, Sue adopts an open and calm body posture and tone of voice throughout the feedback session. You can also notice that Chris is relaxed in this feedback session, and he does not look or feel uncomfortable or disappointed in his presentation. As you can see, Feedback is meant to narrow the gap between an individual's current and preferred performance if delivered and received correctly.